Have you ever thought about what actually happens when you plug a brand new device into a computer network?
Like a new printer or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or, what happens when two massive servers need to talk to each other from across the globe? Because they don't just like immediately start dumping complex data files back and forth.
You're right, that would be a disaster.
Total chaos. They actually perform something called a handshake protocol, which is this highly structured, entirely predictable exchange of these tiny digital pings.
It's very formal.
It really is. One system reaches out and essentially says, are you there? Are you ready to communicate?
Mhm.
And the other replies, I am here and I am ready.
And it's completely automatic.
Right. And without it, absolutely no complex information can ever be shared between those two machines.
Yeah, I mean, it is the absolute foundation of connectivity. Without that initial agreed upon baseline protocol, you basically just have two isolated systems staring at each other in the dark, you
Yeah.
know? Entirely incapable of exchanging meaning.
Which brings us to today. Because we are going to look at how you, as a human being, perform that exact same handshake protocol every single day.
We do it constantly without even thinking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we are taking a stack of your source material today, specifically an English learning curriculum, to deconstruct the fundamental building blocks of human connection. The source we're analyzing is episode 2 of a program called Daily English 365.
Which, I mean, on the very surface might look like a highly basic introductory lesson. It's designed for absolute beginners learning English as a second language.
Right. It features a warm professional narrator, a really cheerful English teacher named Emma, and this curious learner named David.
The setup is super straightforward.
It is. And sure, we could just look at this as a simple vocabulary lesson, but that is not what we do here. By looking at how language is taught from absolutely scratch, like literally starting from the word hello, we are going to uncover what it actually takes for two strangers to bridge the gap between them.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you look at it that way.
Right, like how do we establish identity? How do we physically build the habits of communication?
Because when you strip a language down to its absolute bare minimum, you aren't just looking at vocabulary and grammar anymore.
You're looking at something much deeper.
Exactly. You are looking at sociology. You're looking at psychology. You are examining the raw mechanics of how humans navigate the inherent risk of approaching someone they do not know.
And I'll give you a little teaser for where this is all heading for you today. By the time we get to the end of this curriculum's transcript, we're going to uncover a pretty profound truth about learning entirely new skills as an adult.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the analysis.
It's so good. We are going to see how the hardest part of learning isn't actually the memorization of new data, but something much deeper. It is about overcoming your own ego.
Which is huge.
But before we get to that, let's unpack this human handshake protocol we see right at the very beginning of the source material.
Yeah, so the source material is highly deliberate in its structure. Every episode begins with the narrator establishing the identity of the channel, saying, hello, everyone, welcome back to Daily English 365, where English becomes part of your everyday life.
Right.
And then it drops us right into a real-life scenario. Emma and David are meeting for the very first time.
And what follows is probably the most universally recognized exchange of human data on the planet. Emma says hello. David says hi.
Classic.
Yeah, Emma says good morning. David repeats good morning.
Mm.
Then Emma asks, how are you today? And David responds with, I'm great, thank you. How are you? To which Emma replies, I'm doing very well, thank you.
It is incredibly rhythmic. Like, ping, acknowledge, ping, acknowledge. It is really rhythmic. But I have to stop you there and push back a little bit on what this curriculum is actively doing.
Okay, go for it.
Look at those responses. I'm great, thank you, and I'm doing very well. Isn't it a bit, I don't know, artificial? The curriculum teaches this overwhelmingly positive response as the default.
Ah, I see what you mean. Like, what if David is having a terrible day? What if his dog is sick, he spilled coffee all over his shirt, and he's feeling miserable? Are we essentially teaching people to lie right out of the gate just to maintain social order?
Well, that is a very common reaction, especially for adults looking at beginner materials. They often feel like the dialogue is entirely sanitized.
Right, like it's fake.
Exactly. But what you have to look at is the underlying function of these specific words. In linguistics and sociology, this exact type of exchange is known as phatic communication.
Phatic communication. Okay, break that down for us. What does that mean?
So phatic communication refers to social pleasantries that are absolutely not meant to be taken literally.
Wait, really? Not literally at all?
Not at all. When Emma asks, how are you? She is not requesting a detailed medical or psychological evaluation of David's current state of being.
She doesn't want to know about the spilled coffee.
Exactly. She is performing the human ping. She is signaling, I acknowledge your presence, I mean you no harm, and I am opening a channel of communication. And David's response, I'm great, is just his way of signaling back, message received, I also mean you no harm, and I accept the open channel.
So it has absolutely nothing to do with emotional truth. It is entirely about safety.
Precisely. It establishes a baseline of goodwill, but beyond just social safety, you also have to consider the cognitive load on a beginner language learner.
Oh, right. The brain power it takes.
Yeah, imagine being David in the real world. You are already translating everything in your head, navigating unfamiliar pronunciation, and dealing with massive social anxiety.
The panic of talking to a native speaker.
Totally. So the curriculum has to give the learner safe, predictable, and polite formulas. You simply cannot introduce the complex, nuanced vocabulary required to express genuine emotional distress in Lesson 2.
I honestly hadn't thought about it as a cognitive load issue. You're giving them a script so they don't have to think while they adjust to the environment.
Exactly. It lowers the barrier to entry.
It's like you don't try to send a terabyte of encrypted data before the servers have even agreed on what time it is. You start with the most basic, friction-free exchange possible.
Why? You establish the rhythm first. And once the rhythm is there, the complexity can follow.
Okay, so if the initial how are you isn't about emotional truth, but rather about establishing safety and rhythm, what happens once that safety is confirmed?
Well, then you have an open channel.
Yeah, exactly. Now you need to know who is on the other end of it. And the transcript moves really naturally from the how are you phase into the exchange of what we could call core identity metadata.
The who are you phase and the specific details the curriculum chooses to prioritize here are really revealing about human nature.
Yes, because Emma asks, what's your name? David says his name is David. They do the polite, nice to meet you exchange. But then the very next question, the immediate priority is geography.
Right, geography.
Emma asks, where are you from? David says he's from the United States and asks her the same. Emma says she's from England. And I find this priority so interesting. Right after someone's name, the very next piece of data we seemingly crave is their location.
Well, in the context of an international language like English, origin is kind of the ultimate common denominator.
How so?
We live in a highly globalized world, right? When two people are speaking a language that isn't native to one or both of them, or they are meeting in a transnational space, their geography is the most immediate, tangible difference between them. It is basically the elephant in the room.
Sure, but in a globalized world, doesn't asking that right away risk immediately putting people into boxes?
What do you mean?
Well, if I say I'm from the U.S., you might immediately have 50 assumptions about me, my politics, my diet, my worldview before I've even said my second sentence. Doesn't leaning into geography as the ultimate icebreaker actually invade stereotyping?
It definitely carries that risk if the conversation just stops there. But you really have to look at how the source material utilizes that geographic information.
Okay.
By addressing it immediately, they aren't trying to stereotype. They are establishing a shared context. They're essentially saying, we are from different places, our backgrounds are entirely distinct, but we are connecting right here, right now, in this shared language.
So they are naming the gap between them.
Yes. And by naming the gap, they build a bridge out of the very thing that separates them. And the curriculum actually spells this out explicitly.
Oh, right. The friendship line.
Exactly. After Emma says she is from England, she says, it's nice to meet people from different countries. And David responds with a line that really functions as the core philosophy of this entire text. He says, yes, English helps people become friends.
English helps people become friends. That is such a crucial detail.
It changes everything.
It really does. It is deliberately framing the entire purpose of this very difficult endeavor. It doesn't say English helps you negotiate a better salary. It doesn't say English helps you navigate an airport. It centers human connection as the primary motivation for doing the hard work of learning.
Which is vital, because utilitarian motivations often just aren't strong enough to carry an adult through the friction of learning a new language.
That makes total sense.
If you are just learning to read a technical manual, you might give up when the grammar gets tough. But the desire for social integration, the desire to not be isolated, is a much more resilient motivator.
Okay, so if the ultimate goal here is human connection and friendship, how does the brain actually acquire the tools to make that happen?
You mean the mechanics of it?
Yeah, because just wanting to speak isn't enough, right? You have to
Yeah.
physically build the habit. Understanding the social purpose is one thing, but this source material also gives us a masterclass in the mechanical how.
It absolutely does. The methodology embedded in this curriculum is highly structured. It doesn't just present the conversation and leave you to figure it out on your own.
Right, let's look at that structure. The instructions are incredibly direct. The narrator acts as this guide who breaks the episode down into specific components.
Very specific blocks.
Yeah, there's a vocabulary review, pronunciation practice, and listening practice. During the practice, the narrator gives commands like repeat, good morning, repeat, hello. And then there is a short challenge or quiz to check comprehension, where the narrator physically pauses, waiting for the learner at home to answer out loud.
And that physical pause is key. It demands active participation rather than just passive consumption.
And the characters themselves reinforce this within the narrative too. David, the curious learner, talks about his habits. He says he studies every morning. Emma, the patient teacher, says she practices every day.
Setting the example.
Exactly. And the channel has a core mantra that they repeat at the very end of every episode. Listen, learn, speak every single day.
That mantra is basically the psychological engine of the entire methodology.
But I want to challenge this methodology a bit, especially that specific focus on daily rote repetition.
Okay, let's hear it.
In our current era, we all have smartphones in our pockets with instant real-time translation apps. You can speak into a phone in your native language, and it will speak out perfect English 2 seconds later.
That is very true.
So is this kind of rote repetition sitting alone in your kitchen saying, repeat after me, hello, is that actually obsolete now? Why put yourself through that when technology can act as a universal translator?
Well, that is the modern dilemma, isn't it? But I think it comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of what language actually is.
I mean,
If you view language merely as raw data, just a transaction of information from brain A to brain B, then yes, an app can do that for you perfectly well.
right.
But as the source established earlier with English helps people become friends, language is much more than just data transfer. It is a biological act. It is a real-time performance skill.
Wait, a biological act? Let me think about how to frame this. You mean it's literally tied to our physical biology, not just our intellect?
Exactly. When you speak a new language, you are literally forcing your brain to forge entirely new neural pathways through a process called neuroplasticity.
But pause on neuroplasticity really quick.
Yeah.
You just mean the brain's ability to literally rewire itself and form new physical connections based on experience.
Yes, your brain is not a static hard drive, it is dynamic tissue. And beyond the brain, you are also commanding the muscles in your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords to move in physical ways they have never moved before.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And an app cannot do that physical labor for you. The repetitive structures in this curriculum, the vocabulary reviews, the built-in pauses for the listener to answer out loud, they are designed to force the physical repetition required for that neuroplasticity to occur.
Oh, I see. So it's like trying to walk through a dense jungle with a machete.
I love that analogy, yeah.
The first time you say a new word, you're hacking through thick vines. It's incredibly slow, it requires a huge amount of conscious effort, and it's frankly exhausting.
You have to think about every single step.
Right, but if you walk that exact same path through the jungle every single day, listen, learn, speak, every single day, eventually you tread down the grass, the path widens, and suddenly you are walking on a paved highway. The app can't clear the jungle for you.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. You have to physically train the mouth and the brain to fire together instinctively. That's why the emphasis is on every single day.
It's about consistency.
It highlights a crucial learning philosophy, consistency over intensity. Binge studying vocabulary for 5 hours once a week is like trying to clear the jungle all at once and then letting it overgrow for 6 days.
It just grows right back.
Exactly. But 10 minutes of physical repetition every single day keeps the path clear. So the rote repetition isn't obsolete. It is the biological prerequisite for fluency.
Wow. But wielding that machete every day requires a massive amount of energy. And I feel like the biggest drain on that energy isn't actually the physical effort. It's fear.
The psychological toll.
Right. The fear that you are clearing the wrong path or that people are watching you struggle. If daily practice is the engine of learning, the fuel required to keep that engine running is the ability to overcome the fear of failure.
Which is incredibly hard.
It is. Which brings us to the psychology of the beginner.
And this is where the curriculum, and specifically the role of the narrator, pivots in a really beautiful way.
It really does.
It shifts from being purely instructional to being deeply empathetic.
At the end of the transcript, the narrator gives this closing motivational monologue. It shifts entirely away from teaching grammar and vocabulary, and it turns into pure emotional support.
Yeah, it's very supportive.
The narrator encourages the learner and delivers this incredible thought. Every fluent speaker was once a beginner.
Every fluent speaker was once a beginner. It's such a simple, almost cliche sentence, but, when you are in the thick of learning, it carries an enormous amount of psychological weight.
It made me reflect heavily on the extreme vulnerability of being a beginner at anything, especially as an adult.
For sure.
Think about your own life. When you are an adult, you are used to competence. You are used to being able to articulate your complex inner thoughts, your humor, your frustrations, your expertise at your job.
You have status.
Right. And when you start learning a new language, you are instantly stripped of all of that competence. You are reduced to the communication level of a toddler.
It's true.
You are literally pointing at things and saying, "I'm great," when you might actually be feeling a profound sense of existential dread.
It is a massive blow to the ego.
It's humiliating. And it raises this psychological friction. For me, we praise children constantly for making mistakes while they learn,
Right, a kid falls off a bike, we cheer and say, try again, you're doing great.
Exactly. But adults are absolutely terrified of sounding foolish or looking incompetent. Why do we lose that grace for ourselves? Why do we expect instant mastery?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the curriculum anticipates exactly that adult anxiety. The source intentionally ends on a note of psychological encouragement because it recognizes a fundamental truth about adult education.
Which is?
The real barrier to fluency isn't intellect, it's ego.
The ego is the roadblock on that jungle path.
Exactly. I mean, the cognitive hurdle of memorizing the word hello or good morning is very low. Almost anyone can do that intellectually.
Right.
But the emotional hurdle of standing in front of another human being, making a mistake, mispronouncing a word and looking foolish, that hurdle is massive. The fear of that social friction, the fear of judgment, is what causes most adults to quit.
Because our ego's primary job is to protect our social standing. It whispers to us, don't say the word if you aren't 100% sure it's perfect, because people will judge you.
And we listen to it.
We do. But if you listen to the ego, you never speak. If you never speak, you never clear the jungle path. You never build the neural pathways we just talked about.
The source material is essentially telling the listener that making mistakes is not a glitch in the learning system, it is the system itself.
Wow. Making mistakes is the system.
Yes. Embracing that fluent speaker was once a beginner mindset is the only way to survive the emotional gauntlet of learning a new skill. You have to willingly dismantle your own ego.
You really have to humble yourself.
You have to accept the vulnerability of being a beginner. You have to allow yourself to stumble awkwardly through the handshake protocol before you can ever hope to have a deep, meaningful conversation.
So let's bring this all together. We started with a simple, seemingly basic transcript for an English beginner's lesson. A 10-minute exercise featuring Emma, David, and a narrator talking about saying hello and asking where someone is from.
Very basic on the surface.
But by peeling back the layers, we've seen how it actually holds profound blueprints for human interaction.
We looked at phatic communication, the vital necessity of that social ping to establish safety and goodwill before any real emotional or complex data is transferred.
And we saw how geography and establishing a shared context can bridge the gap between strangers, reinforcing that the true purpose of learning a language isn't just utilitarian data transfer. It's about building human connection.
We also examined the architecture of habit, the biological reality of neuroplasticity. We saw how repetition and consistency, listening, learning, and speaking every single day are physically required to wire new skills into the brain.
Something an app can never do for you.
Exactly.
And finally, we looked at the sheer vulnerability required to learn anything new. We discussed how we have to actively fight our own adult egos to accept that every fluent expert was once a stumbling, awkward beginner.
It is a remarkable amount of wisdom packed into a lesson where the main characters just ask each other how they are doing.
It really proves that the fundamentals are never just fundamentals. They are the scaffolding upon which all complex human behavior is built. Which leaves us with a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive. We've talked a lot about the vulnerability of David the learner and the courage it takes to stumble through those first awkward words in a new language. But, Language is just one type of skill.
It applies to everything.
It really does. So think about your own life right now. Think about an area, maybe it's a new project at work, a new creative hobby you've been putting off, a new relationship, or even a completely new career path where you are holding yourself back.
We all have one.
We do. Are you hesitating because you truly lack the intellect or the resources? Or are you holding back because your ego is terrified of looking foolish in front of other people? What would happen if you applied the "every fluent speaker was once a beginner" mindset to that specific part of your life today?
That's a great question.
What would happen if you just sent out that first awkward digital ping and trusted that the connection would follow?
That is the real challenge, isn't it? Stepping into the jungle.
It certainly is.